morning, everyone. I'm Kamran Musa from PIQC Institute of Quality, Pakistan. First of all, I'd like to thank all the organizers of this summit, Higher Education, World Higher Education Ranking Summit is perhaps going to be one of the important summit discussing on the issues of basically the quality and ranking system in the global scenario. I'll be discussing some of the important topics or experiential aspects of this subject of outcome-based education and academic quality assurance. I live in the city of Lahore, Pakistan, which is a lovely city and is considered one of the beautiful cities of the country with beautiful people around it. These are some of the glimpses of the city of Lahore. Okay, let me talk and give you the focus of my talk will be on learning outcomes, strategies, and some good practices from the academic institutions. Now, this word outcome-based education is a technical word used in academia. In the European higher education area, or EHEA, defines OBE or outcome-based education as follows. Outcome-based education focuses on students' learning, using learning outcome statements to make explicit what the student is expected to be able to know, understand, or do, providing learning activities which will help the students to reach these outcomes, assessing the extent to which the student meets these outcomes through the use of explicit assessment criteria. Now, when we talk of the academic quality, there are basically three dimensions to the institutions. The first one is academic resources, which usually covers the teacher's capital, physical infrastructure, management infrastructure, financial infrastructure. The teaching and other processes, which includes the learning objectives defined by the institutions, the teaching policy, teaching methods, curriculum, assessment, and research activities and research processes. Now, based on these two aspects, we usually get the educational outputs, which is basically the performance of the institutions, the learning outcomes gained by the students, the results, the competencies, the operational outcomes, knowledge, students learning, the skills and abilities. And usually when we talk of the outcome-based education, some of the synonymous words used for this is student-centered education and skill-centered education as well. Another important topic or a subject which we commonly ignore in many institutions is metacognition, a commonly missing subject which is very important for the students and as well as for the teachers. What is metacognition? Recognition, understanding, and controls of one's own thinking and learning processes. That means for the students, do they recognize, do they understand how they are learning and whether they are learning correctly or not? And if they understand and they understand the gaps between what the learning processes should be and what they are actually practicing, are they able to control and improve their learning processes? It refers to higher order thinking, which involves active control by the students over their own cognitive processes. In other words, if a student knows and recognizes his or her own learning processes and able to improve that process, then it is basically going to help improve the quality of the learning by the students. I usually teach this subject, this is usually my first lecture to the master's or MS level students where I teach them in the research, for the research degrees or the master's level academic programs. Now, learning to learn or thinking to think is what I found out is a missing element in the students, or in most of the students. Now, let me start with few questions. Number one, we all know that teachers teach and students learn, and as a result, the students get the grades. But the question is, are grades the reflection of the quality of the learning? This is very important, and in most of the cases, or in many of the cases, I found this is not so. Teachers think that they have given sufficient material and they have delivered their lectures, and it is the ability of the student to capture whatever they want to, and perhaps they should learn what they have taught. But in reality, sometimes it's not so. The second is, when the students at the end of the course or the semester, when we see there are a number of students who fail or those who do not understand effectively, we usually blame the students for not putting their sufficient efforts in the learning processes. And if the students, they get good grades, we take the credit as teachers, and we assume that perhaps all the learning which we are supposed to give is basically taken by the students. Again, there are a number of issues in this. If the students don't perform well, it is on the students, and if the students perform well, we take the credit as teachers. Similarly, another question is, do employers accept students' grades as the definition of quality? If they do, then perhaps those who get A grades would get a job before those who get this B grade or C grades, and they perhaps get more. They have their market salary perhaps is more. But again, we found out from the various experiences that this is not so. Those who sometimes get C grades or B grades, they lead in the market. It's not always true, but most of the time, the grades and the market acceptability is sometimes not meshed together. Let me also use the word and clarify the differences between the two words, which often the students do the mistakes. Is a qualified student also a competent student? And this is one of the core questions of the OBE, or outcome-based education. Qualification is basically the process of acquisition of knowledge. So, a student is qualified if he acquired all the knowledge in the lectures which he or she has taken in the classes. And we normally, when they go through the exams, we usually check their knowledge and the knowledge and their the abilities based on whatever we have taught. On the other side, competencies is basically the application of knowledge. After getting the knowledge, is the student able to apply the knowledge in the real scenario, in the real world, or in the organization that they are working? So, knowledge application and knowledge acquisition are two different things. Knowledge, the test, usually the exams in the universities and colleges and also in the schools, is based on the topics that we have covered and the content and the quality of what we have taught them. That is basically acquisition of knowledge. On the other side, competencies is sometime with the corporate world and the real world outside of the university is looking for in the graduates. So those who excel in the competencies, usually they get better jobs. They are better aligned with the societies in which they are living, and the society appreciate them based on their knowledge and skills. So in outcome-based education, our focus will be on the abilities of the students which he or she can or is able to do in the real world. Let me give you an example. In mathematics, for example, from basically the grade 8, 9, 10th, 11th, 12th in the college or schools, and also in the universities, in the subject like mathematics or statistics, we very oftenly use the word or learn what is the difference between the mean, median, and mode. Now, for example, if we take the data 1, 3, 3, 5, 7, 8, 9, and we take the mean, which is 5.14, the median of this would be 5 and the mode is 3. Now, when the statistics teacher is teaching this thing, does he or she knows where the student will apply the median, mode, or the mean? And in order to check that, we can go to the corporate world and we see the reports, the testing reports, the marketing reports where these are used. In 99% of the time we see that people are using, or the graduates are using, or the professionals are using in this regard only the mean. The median and mode is not being used. Why? Are these not applicable in the corporate world, in the reports, statistical reports? Or the professionals do not know how to apply them in different contexts? For example, if the universities, if two sections of the class, for example, if we measure the average grades of students in two classes and their mean is 70, most of the time the people think that these two teachers or the quality of the learning is the same for these two classes. However, if we look at the grade itself and we find out that in class B, there were two students who were absent and they got 0. One of the students got 90 and perhaps 4 of the students got 100. Now, if we think without knowing the details of the grades, if we think that from just looking at the mean, it looks like the quality of the learning is the same. But when we see the details, and if you look at, if for example, if the class A, all the students got 70%, and in class B, 4 or 5 got nearly 100 and 2 were absent, they got 0. The class B, the learning of the students of class B is much higher than the learning of the class A. But how do we know if we are only using the mean? This is through the use of the median. If you look at the median of the two, then they are different. The median of class A is 70 and the median of the class B is 100. So are the teachers who are teaching, and when they are assessing the students based on just mean, and when the deans of the universities, they just look at the mean grades of the students, and without looking at the median of the grades, would they be able to understand the phenomena more accurately? Of course not. And this is the issue, that when we learn in the schools, in the universities, the median and the mode and the mean, we did not learn in many cases where to apply them and where to use them. And as a result, we are not using in many of the cases. Similarly, from the mathematical point of view, the subjects or the topics, differential equations, integration, or in trigonometry, we use the words, we learn the concepts of sine theta, cos theta, tan theta. In religion, we study the subject of ethical practices and concepts, the constitution and civics, geography, chemistry, physics, IT, in the science and so forth. Do we assess how much learning outcome has gone, although the students may have got A grades, but are they able to apply in the real world? This is a question when we deal with the subject of, when we talk within the theme of outcome-based education, which is very important for universities to learn and understand. Do exams reflect the students' outcomes or the students' quality? And do the exam grades, for example, reflect students' learning outcomes? Is this performance indicator the true reflector of qualification or competence of students? This is an important topic, and this is an important aspect of the learning phenomena. Many of the time, you see, even if the students are getting the higher grades, they are basically not competent enough. And it is our job to make sure that they are not just only qualified, but they are also competent on the concepts and the knowledge that we have given them. If not, because just from the grades, the problem is the students get into something. For example, if the student gets A's and B's in all the subjects that they have gone through the courses, and when the students, they are appreciated on the good grades by the teachers and by their families and by their friends, when the students are promoted to the next classes or next semesters based on these grades, but the students have actually not gained the required level of competencies. Imagine what have we done with the students? We have put that students in something which is illusion of competence and not the competence itself. These illusions, this is the problem when they go to the interviews in the corporate world, and when they ask the questions related with the competence of the students, the student many times is not able to give the answers just because, however, they are confused that they've gone through the whole university for 4 years or 5 years, and the problem is they are not able to give the answers which are basically from the angle of the competencies when the corporate sector asks in the interviews or the exams. And this is because of a phenomena of our assessment or examination systems. Are exams testing the students' inputs or outputs? Are our exams measuring the students' acquisition of knowledge? How much students have understood what we have taught? Or is the exam measuring the competencies of the students, how much they are able to apply the knowledge in the real world? And sometimes it's very confusing from the teacher's point of view as well. All the stakeholders, most of the time, they are measuring, except the corporate world, the employers, they measure on the competencies and knowledge and competencies together, whereas the schools and the universities, they measure on the qualifications or the knowledge domain, on the inputs of the knowledge which were given to the students during the studies. So there is a difference between the output and outcome of universities. Output of the universities is basically, output of universities is the degrees, the qualifications, whereas the outcome of the universities are the competencies, abilities, and the personalities of the student which is ready for the corporate world. So the output of the universities is the quantity of the knowledge that we have given to the students. However, the outcome is the quality of teaching, which is basically reflected in the abilities which has been gained by the students themselves. So academic quality is the learning outcome of courses and the programs. It's about meeting the learning standards and the outcome. And academic quality assurance and improvement is about development, monitoring, reporting, and improving the learning outcomes or standards of the student. So we have to be student-centered, more on the student-centered rather than the teacher-centered approach. We have to adopt this. And this approach will lead us to focus on the competencies, abilities, and the behavior of the students rather than just the knowledge of the students. There are 3 stages of developing the competencies. The input, the students listen to the lectures, they read, they observe things. The processes of this knowledge is the critical thinking process, building the logic through various teaching activities, the exercises, group discussions, drills, simulations, experiments, visits of the industries, and so forth. This will allow them to process the knowledge that they have learned. And the third one is the result of this processes of the knowledge. That is, creating the ability to use the knowledge, creating ability to apply the knowledge, and they form new habits or exchange or change of existing habits, if that doesn't happen, then perhaps we have failed in building the required knowledge into the personalities of the student. Let me share one of the courses on leadership taught in one of the university. This institution, which is teaching leadership course, has considered that leadership is not taught, cannot be taught effectively within the classroom. So what they do is they take students in the group to various places and try to build the leadership skills within that experiential learning through the practices. You can see the glimpses here. You can see that these people are working, these students are working on different parts of the northern area of the country. They are taken into 5 to 10 days trip. They practice all what they have learned with taking into risk all the areas. The instructor is also looking and monitoring them and teaching them. You can see these students are basically the master's level students in the evening programs or from the corporate world, and then you can see that how practically this course is taught. Leadership is one of the most commonly taught subject in our management sciences. However, one of the most weakest area in the corporate as well as at a national level. So it's important that we teach students from the practical experiences as well. You can see here, they are all the assessors are also, the teacher is also with them, and they're also going on through various practical examples. So to cut the thing short, the inputs of a student, there are so many inputs of the knowledge, and what are the outcomes of the students? If the outcome is no or little understanding of the subject, or the outcome is little or no skills, or little abilities to apply in the real world, or no change or little change in the behavior of students, then we use the word that the students who graduated is incompetent. And that's the biggest complaint of the corporate world most of the time from the students coming out of the universities, that they are very theoretical. They do not know how to behave in the practical world, and it takes few years for the students to bring them in the concept of practical and teach them the practical abilities. I would now like to give you, and many of you would be familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, a taxonomy of learning. Basically, Bloom's taxonomy deals with 3 domains, as most of the academicians perhaps are familiar with: the cognitive domain, the psychomotor domain, and the affective domain. The cognitive domain deals with the knowledge levels of higher order thinkings or difficulty levels. The skill is about the psychomotor domain, deals with the skill levels of the students, and the affective domain with the values and the emotional response of the students. Now, these are commonly, in the layman term, usually dealt with these knowledge, skills, and attitude, which which should be addressed by the teachers. It's not only about the knowledge; it's also about the skills and the attitude or the behavioral change that we are desiring to build a good society. Now, let me just very quickly discuss with the Bloom's taxonomy. There are, as most of you would know, that there are 6 levels of Bloom's taxonomy. The first level is the knowledge level, which deals with only simply the information, which is based on the memorization of the knowledge. The second level is the comprehension level, which deals with the logical understanding of the topic by the students. The level 3 is the application level, which is the abilities of the student to apply the knowledge in the real world, and this is where the focus is required, especially at the undergraduate level. At the higher level, even in an undergraduate level also, the learning of the higher level is on analysis level, which is based on the inquiries or research activities which we give to the students. The fifth level is synthesis level, or the level of creativity, which the students from their critical thinking comes up with some creative thing which is not even taught in the class, but come up with the creative solutions. And the evaluation level is the judgment level, or the validation level, the abilities of the student to differentiate between different things of the phenomena, like what's the difference between Christianity and Islam, what's the difference between various world leaders and how their leadership skills, what's the difference between two, or what's the difference between the human resource department of University A versus University B, these sort of things. So from the student's point of view, the lower cognitive level information and logical information is a lower level. We have to build students to come up to the higher cognitive levels. So, or the knowledge level is simply the memorization of the knowledge, whereas the synthesis level or analysis level is the creative or the inquiry level or critical thinking based on the subject which are being taught to the students. Let me share with you some of the papers which clarify this thing. This is one of the exam paper in one of the school, is basically on the chemistry. Now, if you look at this paper, look at the questions given. Define radical, define a modern periodic law, define double triple covalent bond, explain gases, define solution, define this, define this, define this. These are level 1 questions. And perhaps 2 of the questions I can say are from the level 2, which are our comprehension level. So if we measure this thing, level 1 questions are 85% and level 2 questions are 15%, and none from the level 3, 4 or 5. So if a student gets the mark of even 100% in this subject, what does it really mean? It means the students has mastered level 1 cognitive level and 85% and 15% of level 2, but none from the 3, 4 and 5. But this phenomena is not known to the students. So they think even getting 100% means they're very competent, they're very capable students. Similarly, this is one of the book of medical universities in gross pathology. Now, if you look at this book, this is the paper of that same book. So this is general pathology, parasitology, or microbiology, MBBS, third professional paper. And if you look at the papers, name the parasites, describe briefly the pathogens, enumerate organism, define hypersensitivity, enumerate this, describe this. This comes to about this. I have gone through taking the samples and evaluating the type of the papers based on the Bloom taxonomy. So this is 90% of the questions are from level 1 and 10% from level 2. Again, the same problem. You see, how come this student who takes 100% even in this paper can be, this is only lower order. We can only say that they have acquired the lower cognitive level and not the higher cognitive level, which is required by the real world. And this one question is from the level 2 level of cognitive. This is another question from applied psychology paper at the bachelor's level. You can see the questions, and I've seen this is describe the structure, draw the explain, define the emotion, define cognitive, define this, write this. These can all be memorized, and these are all 100% from the level 1 questions. Similarly, at the BA level, questions again. I've seen this paper. I've taken this paper from Google of various universities of this region, and I've seen again this problem. 90% question from level 1 and 10% from level 2. Now look at some of the questions which are the good examples of assessment. For example, the trigonometry. This is a picture given on the question itself. Now you can see even the question explains and gives the practical scenario of trigonometry, the subject. And this is from the application level question. Similarly, another question is to calculate how high is the aeroplane flying based on the trigonometry triangle. This is again the question from the application level, and this is the pictures of the questionnaire from the questionnaire. Again, look at this question. I'm not going into the details, but look at the type of the questions which is giving the practical scenario to the students. how to calculate and how to giving the real life problems and then using trigonometry to solve the problems. Look at this one. Look at this. How high is this mountain based on the trigonometry knowledge that we have learned? Again, this question. You can see that they are using practical context to describe the questions. Look at these. Look at these questions, Just I'm showing you the exam questions, how practically they are using the trigonometry. And look at this poor example of giving all the questions in a numeric, in a descriptive form without using a practical scenario, of the exams. The students have to memorize all these things. So this is not a good example, this one. Now this is another very good example, and again, one of the schools in Pakistan, for example, showing ethics to the students. Look at this box. They have put this box. These are what they call it honor shops. Honor, HONOR, honor shops. They have put these things, pencils, sharpeners, rubbers, things in various places with such desks. And there are also money. You can see the money is in one of the pockets. The student comes and put the money, which is written on the desk. What is the price of this pencil? They put the money, they take back the remaining, and they go back. This is from grade 1 students to grade 12 students. And this, you can see, they are trying to teach ethics. These are unmonitored. Nobody is there who is selling. There is no seller of this with this box, In this way, they think that they are teaching the students the skills and the application of the ethics rather than just giving the lectures of ethics in the classes. They have used this technique to make students honorable, ethically sound, and inculcate this thing in the behaviors of the students. This is, for example, they use the citizenship. They use the citizenships. They use citizenships in order to develop the citizenships. The students raise the flag of the country. This is the code of ethics printed in the front door of the schools, what the students, what are the ethical things, These are the fire brigade things they teach to students, that in the society, wherever they are in the future, they are able to be part of the good citizenship and use these things in case of emergencies. This is, for example, they take students to the various areas, and they teach them leadership and love with the nature. You can see these, for example, this is the group of students going in the mountainous area in winter, and they are for 15 days or so. They are exposed to the nature to build love for the nature. This is, for example, in the morning ceremony, they stand and they listen to the national anthem, and they practice and they give respect to the nationalism. This is in case of one of the disaster earthquake. The students were sent on weekly trips to the northern areas, or to teach all the students who were displaced, so that they get the responsibilities, they understand the responsibilities, and their role in the society. They do the walks, for example, the walk for cleanliness in the city, and the walk for environmental, love. They go and do these walks throughout the city where where this school is situated. This is called the SPS College, Swat, in the northern area. This is, the students have to give thalassemia center. There is a problem of thalassemia in that center, in that area. So the students daily, 10 to 15 students, they donate their blood to all those thalassemia center. This is just to build the civics sense in the students, not just through the lectures, but through the practical examples. This is another honor shop, the student is just practicing. So the knowledge, comprehension and application are, for example, in our papers, it's not just sufficient to judge from the papers, but also to assess from various activities and practices, you know. And this, for example, in our institute, through this COVID or Corona area of 1 to 2 year, we went on online, and then we developed a system of performance monitoring through Power BI, Power Business Intelligence Program of the Microsoft. What we do is we measure the student learning outcome based on the assessment of the questionnaire of the Bloom's taxonomy. And the first upper left graph, you can see the assessment. So based on the Bloom's level 4 and 5, you know, we assess how much they have learned. And similarly, students' motivational outcome, or SMO we call it. Then the excellence level is basically all those students giving 4 and 5 rating are the excellence level. And those students who are giving 1 or 2 rating to various topics are below the right side, the rightmost graph, you know. So we understand how many students are giving basically the poor rating, and then there are slide sharing quality and their sound quality because of the technology assessment. So in this way, you know, you can see like 83% excellence level given there. These are the KPIs. 5% students give rating of 1 to 2. You know, this is the data of 752 lectures, you know, which we carried out through various times and so forth. So in this manner, it's an important thing to measure the Bloom's level, not just the grades, the Bloom's level. We teach students the Bloom's taxonomy, and then we ask them to rate at the end of the semester, the course, that where they will rate on the 1 to 6 level of the Bloom's, where will they rate this lecture. And this is how they have given this, you know, assessment criteria. This is with respect to various courses. Each course and each complaint we note down, and so we know very well which course and which student is giving which type of complaint, so that we can also check the profile of the student, you know, and also go with the interview with the student as well. These are again the same 3 or 4 slides of the you know, Power BI giving the same rating. So educational goals are basically the competitive edge of nations is not based on the learning outcome of the level 1. We have to build or increase the cognitive levels in our teaching methodologies, you know, where comprehension, application, analysis, and synthesis level is addressed in our teaching and in our assessment system. So those nations who have dealt with this area and they deal with these subjects at the higher cognitive level are actually growing very fast. And those who are only dealing with the knowledge level, those institutions, those colleges, those students, basically they do not make fully they do not achieve the goals which they are supposed to get, the goals of building the students' level. Now, one of the problem with this is the teacher's abilities. We try to make the goal which is higher cognitive goal, for example, the application and analysis. Now the question is the teacher qualified enough, competent enough to teach the skill, or only theoretical in teaching the theoretical knowledge? So if we set our goals for the students to achieve the level 3 or 4 from the Bloom's taxonomy, we have to make sure that the teacher is also have that necessary skills, whether it is a leadership course, whether it is a mathematics course, whether it is a chemistry course, or the management sciences. A teacher who has not worked through in the industry, how can that teacher teach the skills of the corporate world of leadership when the teacher has not even seen the corporate world from the practical scenario, have not worked into it, and not even successfully done the leadership in those aspects? The final thing, very briefly, which I'll discuss is concept of BIGS, which is constructive alignment. There are 3 things without going into the technical details of these things. The students' learning outcomes should be based on basically one of the taxonomy that I have used today is the Bloom's taxonomy. But however, there are other taxonomies. Students' learning outcomes must be very clearly defined, the level of cognitive level in each subject or in each chapter that we are teaching in a class. Then the teaching method should be according to the requirement of the learning outcome. If the learning outcome requires level 3 or level 4, or for example application level, then when we are teaching ethics, then we have to make sure that we taught the students in the application level. And the third one is the assessment. The assessment should be based on the student learning outcome most of the time. So the student learning outcomes is basically what the student has to learn. The teaching method is engaging students to achieve the student learning outcome, and the assessment should be accordingly correctly built and made how well the students has achieved the SLO. Now the question is, are these aligned? How to align an unaligned course? That means we have developed the SLOs, we evaluate, review, and regularly revise the SLOs. The development of the syllabus should be based on the SLOs. Secondly, we have to make lesson plans to achieve that SLO. We have to regularly have an infrastructure of evaluation and review, and regularly revising the lesson plans and curriculum to make sure that students are achieving the SLOs, and the teachers have to learn the new techniques of teaching based on the requirement of the SLOs. And the final is the assessment method, which is the weakest point usually in our universities, is the content validity and reliability, the exam management, and the post-exam feedback. They should make sure that if the level 3 is taught, then the exam is also of the level 3, which I have discussed earlier in this section. So putting things together in the cognitive domain, the affective domain and psychomotor, which the psychomotor and affective domain I have not touched upon today, but these three domains provide a framework of taxonomy of the learning outcomes. We have to make our learning outcomes, we have to make sure our teaching activities are based on these or other similar taxonomies. Then we have to make sure that the citizenship is effectively built into the character of the students, and also the ethics is built into the character of the students. If these are effectively addressed, then of course we won't see so many wars going on around the world, so many demonstrations going on, so many problems with the corporate world going on in the world, and slowly and gradually it will improve. There are various aspects of these SLOs, like program educational objects, development of programs outcomes, course outcomes, and chapter outcomes or topic level, which we have to deal, and each teacher has to deal with these things. Program educational objectives is what we measure after 2 to 4 years of graduation, and the program outcomes are basically we measure during their studies or immediately after the completion of these studies. So when we are making the curriculum, we have to make sure that we develop the outcomes based on, if we are using the Bloom's taxonomy, then we have to make sure that each subject and the topic of chapter of each subject, we are very clear in deciding the learning outcome level at the beginning of development of basically the curriculum. So at the end, the question is, have we developed the right SLOs for our students for the subject that we are teaching? Have we developed the right curriculum and the methodologies of teaching also, and the contents of our subject matter correctly to achieve the required SLOs, which are based on, taken from the feedback of the corporate world and the national priorities? And the third one is, have we developed the right teaching and exam methods to measure and to achieve the right SLOs or student learning outcomes? The QA strategies for these include the setting and enhancing the learning goals, which should be based on the priority of for example, there should be a priority goal by the vice chancellors and the deans. Using Bloom taxonomy is a good framework which we can use for delivering and measuring the quality of the students' outcomes. The self-assessment reports, the grades, the documentation should not just be the goal itself, but they should be used to achieve the goals. The dean should take the leading role for the quality assurance of learning outcomes, while quality enhancement cell in some of the universities that we have seen, they have developed this infrastructure, or the QA department should develop frameworks in their universities for improving the learning outcomes. All teachers should go through the Bloom's taxonomy framework or a similar one for enhancing learning levels of their classes. They should be accountable for the outcomes for the classes which they are teaching. They're not accountable just for the output of the knowledge that they have covered in the courses. It's good to measure the Bloom's levels. Students should be engaged by improving their learning skills by teaching them metacognition. So students should also be engaged in this process, which is a joint process of teacher and students themselves. Students should be given sufficient knowledge in metacognition so that they understand the Bloom taxonomy and they are able to set their goals correctly as well when they are going through the courses. And their goal is not usually the grades, but the learning outcome which they can learn. So for students, quality of their learning is quality of their future. And for teachers and institution, quality of their teaching is quality of our next generation. There's a common quote that if we continue to do what we were doing, we will continue to get what we were getting. So we require, and in our institutions, we require basically the intention, the interest, the initiatives, and the efforts, determination and sincerity, and the learning behavior of the changes that we are desiring for improving our educational institutions. And WARES organizations like WARES and others who are involved in the assessment and giving the rating of the institutions are basically very important aspect that they are covering for one of the good stakeholders who can support the institution by focusing more on the learning outcome, as many of them are doing. So with this, I end up my talk of today. I'm really grateful to all the organizers for giving me an opportunity to present this, my thought on these subjects. I wish you all great success. And if anybody needs any further feedback, they can basically write to me on the email. One of my courses is also available on udemy.com, which is on the same topic, outcome-based education and academic quality assurance. Thank you very much and best of luck. Thank you.